Hello and welcome everyone in today's another episode of Researcher Celebrities, and today we are fortunate enough to have Joe, who is a graduate student at Texas A&M University in College Station, and he will be explaining his research and his basic interest in that. And thank you very much, Joe, for getting time for us. And
Yeah, of course.
please.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so how it started, let's start from the basics. When was the time when you thought that you are more interested in research?
Yeah. So I started off my time at my undergrad institution back in New Jersey. I went to Stockton University, and I originally chose the school because it was closer to home and it had a very good physical therapy program. So I was interested in, I guess, more of the clinical side of medicine and everything. And as I'm taking my courses, I did take my required biology courses, and I'm learning lessons in cellular biology and cell division, and I had a lot of questions about just generally how things are working, and a lot of my questions were why questions or how, and my professor would always, oh, you should probably read this paper is pretty much the response I'd get, or you should listen to or read this chapter of this textbook, and the questions kind of started pushing me a little bit further in that direction, and I just found that I had a little bit more of an affinity towards that, so I started pursuing it a little bit more.
Okay, so that is how any researcher starts to start asking question why and how this thing works.
Yeah.
And when was the time when you realized that you really want to pursue a PhD?
Yeah, I was, so that would probably be my junior year, or the end of my junior year of undergrad. So, and I realized around this time because I'd worked on a few projects before that, so two were pretty similar, but the project that really started it off for me and made me think about pursuing a PhD would have been a class. It was technically a class that I took, and it was a natural science and math writing course, which was a requirement for my degree. So I signed up for the course, and the course was oriented around writing a research proposal for some type of experiment that you could conduct in space on the International Space Station. Now, you wouldn't be doing it yourself, but you would write the proposal for an astronaut that's on board the International Space Station to collect the data, and you would analyze data and draw your conclusions from there. So me and my friends, we wrote a proposal, and we were really interested in medical research, and specifically cancer we were interested in just because we read a few papers at that point. We didn't read a lot of literature as undergrad, but what we read was mainly about that. And we pretty much all agreed on DNA damage repair. So from DNA damage repair, we were thinking about what we could do, and we ended up writing a research proposal for studying DNA damage repair in yeast. So it's a really small model organism, single cellular eukaryote. And working on that project, I got to work with a great professor at my undergrad. His name was Dr. Michael Law, and he did a great job, I think, of mentoring us and showing us what science is about being collegial and fostering some type of community and working with other people, collaborating and presenting your research. And I really just had a great time doing it. I work with my co-researchers that were in my lab with me and with our PI, and had a really good time. So he asked me if I'd been interested in graduate school, and I said, yeah, I thought about it briefly, and he recommended a PhD. So, and I started looking a little bit more closely, and that's what got me to apply.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So now when you made up your mind that you want to do a PhD with a certain mindset, and then now when you're almost at the end of your second year of your PhD, have anything changed in between?
I don't think anything has changed in between. I think I went in with the purpose of wanting to ask better questions, I think, and to pursue a faculty position is really what I'm interested in academia, a teaching position. So I think that was the main reason why I went in.
Very good.
I mean, that was definitely my reasoning, and at the end of my second year, it's still my reason.
Oh, perfect.
So, yeah.
That's great, because I know there is a saying that your PhD is validated once you give, you are the reason, you're mentoring another 3 or 4 students under you. That's when a great researcher who I know, that's how he quoted that's when you validate your PhD, when you just inculcate or replicate yourself in other upcoming students. You can transfer the knowledge. So I think that's your idea already, starting with that. That's a good one. So when you see the openings and in research, as you already made up your mind that you wanted to be in academia as a faculty, and then carry on pursue this forever, what is the passion which keeps it driving? Because probably most of the researchers will agree that there are always uphills and downhills. Sometimes the experiments are not working the way you want, and you feel not very happy about the results. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that came to my head is you have to be interested in the original question that you're asking, and just follow your data at that point. And I think I have when I run an experiment, it'd be really cool if this happened. But realistically, if it doesn't happen, then that tells you something too, and that kind of allows you to pivot into your next experiment. So I think that there are definitely highs and lows, but I don't think that at least I tell myself not to get beat up on the lows, because there's some information to be had from that as well. So instead of looking at it as something that you can sulk in, maybe look at it as an opportunity to kind of redirect your energy towards something else.
So I think if I can correlate it with most of the Nobel laureates, they say that there is nothing called negative data, because you can get information out of that also, and then you can say that, okay, this thing cannot be done this way.
I would agree with them. Yeah, I mean they're Nobel laureates for a reason.
So what we can see here is like Joe is already on that path, and all the ideologies, his roadmap is clear, and he wanted to do things like that. So as you already mentioned that you wanted to be in academia doing research for the rest of your life as of now.
Yes.
How do you see your peers when some of them enter with very high enthusiastic, very high energy when they start their PhD, and then some of them don't pursue it, and they just walked out doing some other thing or getting a degree? So what are your interactions when you interact with your peers who are struggling in there? What is your suggestion to them?
Yeah, I think that can be caused by a number of things. I'm not an expert in mentoring PhD students, but from what I've seen in some of my friends, I think that at the end of the day, you have to follow your passion. I think that a PhD is definitely going to test whether or not you're passionate about something, because you don't want to go through all the training and the failed experiments if you're really not that passionate about it. So I think that if that's someone's passion, then they should keep pursuing it, and if it's not, then it's okay. There's other things that people can pursue too. But I would also say that I've noticed that in people who have a tough time separating work and personal life too. And I think that research is, you have a lot of friends when you come into lab, and you spend time with them, like I spent time with Raja. I'm very grateful for that. But you also have to remember that you have your own research that you have to do, and that's what you show up for every day. So it's great to have personal connections to the lab, and I definitely would encourage it, but I think there's an important line to be drawn to about just making sure that you're spending time for yourself, and then also time in lab. If you don't have any time for yourself, no energy for yourself, then you're probably not going to have much time to give to lab, and it can cause burnout and maybe some other issues that could be underlying that as well.
Oh, that's a very crucial point, and I think everybody talks about the work-life balance, as you pointed it out. So when you see a person who's burning out, or when you see yourself that, okay, you decide that, okay, now it is my time, I need a break, and you are working towards a timeline, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think I typically try to compromise with myself. So if I have 5 experiments that need to be done, and they're pretty time intensive, I'll say, okay, let me do 1 or 2 right now. I'll take a little bit of a break, separate myself from everything, and then I'll go back in and get it done. Get another one done before the day ends, and then be able to split it up within the next day and finish off the rest of the 5 that I have left. So I think it's about just knowing when to stop, and knowing when you reach a point where even if you stay in lab, or you stay trying to do experiments or collect data, your point of exhaustion could influence your results at that point, just because you could be too tired, and you're not as on your game. So I think that's just an important thing to recognize, and I think I've realized that over time too. Many failed experiments, you think, maybe I was a little too tired that day.
Yes.
I forgot to add the DNA into the
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So, yeah.
This all happens with us. That's true. So I think what Joe just mentioned here is like one important part is prioritizing your experiment also. When you're working towards a deadline, you prioritize your things that, okay, there are the things which needs to be done in advance. There are things which are just supporting experiments which you might shift towards the later one.
Yes, yeah.
But when you maintain and when you are in an environment where there you are responsible for yourself as well as you are helping in other projects also, because I think that's how nowadays the research is coming up. Like you always have a main project which you are pursuing for a PhD, and because you are in a lab and you are working in a collaborative environment, you are helping someone with some other things. And how important you think that collaboration is, because some students what they face is like they are an independent researcher in a lab, which is a good enough lab, and the resources can be utilized in a better way. But they are so focused with their research that they don't participate in other projects, and which might help them in future and basic understanding. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think collaboration is extremely important. I think that that's part of why, I mean, to me, that's what makes up a PhD too, is being able to work with other people and being able to bounce ideas and plan experiments and work as a team member on a project. So I think it's really important. I think that if you're worried about balancing collaboration and your personal project, I think that you should probably prioritize like your personal project, but also respect the energy and the time that other people are putting into it. So just open communication with them. If you don't have the time to do something, then let them know that. But also time management as well will probably play into that, making sure that you're getting your own work done and on top of the work that you're doing with your collaborators. But I think that collaboration is super important. So I think that not only can you gain more information and you could potentially, provide more information to people that you're working with, and you can educate each other. I also think that it provides perspective too. If you're, working in different fields, or you bring different experiences to the table. So.
Absolutely. So one of the points which nowadays people are facing is like when you are a graduate student, you're pursuing your PhD, then now you have to go to different conferences, workshops to learn some skills, to present your data, work. So there comes the point of networking. What do you think? How crucial is networking? Because you're talking about the collaboration within the lab. There is a thing like you can collaborate, like across the continent nowadays. The technology is there, so you can collaborate with anyone. And for that, initially, when you are going to conferences, you make networks. And this is something which not many of the researchers do. When they are pursuing their PhD, they think like, okay, let's just finish the PhD first, and then we'll approach someone for the postdoc or doing other possibilities, what they want to explore. What are your thoughts about it, that when you are doing PhD, you create a niche for yourself in a different environments, interacting with PIs over the continent or across the continent, globe, and then you can obviously increase your, broaden your horizon and creating further possibilities for your future.
Yeah. I think I can only speak on that to a certain extent, just because I'm attending my first national conference at the end of the month, and I've only been to more local conferences so far. So in terms of collaboration with some international collaboration or collaboration with somebody that's maybe across the country, I might not be able to speak to that to a certain level of depth, but I think that probably a good way to go about it would be someone that people want to work with. And that goes into the effort that you put forth, how well you can be a team player too, because I think that's one of the number one thing that people really like to look for, is find somebody that can work with everybody and that can make a project be a lot more smoother rather than a hassle to get things done. And then also in terms of a skill set, just I guess I would plan, at least in the future for me and my future collaborations, to try to build up a lot of different aspects of my research knowledge and methodologies and skill sets, and hope to bring that to the table. So I would say try to, add as many tools as you can to your research toolkit so that you can, approach a lot of problems with, the right tool. So.
Okay, so this takes us to our next question, because you just started your PhD, and this might be very, in the infant stages. This question which is coming right now is like, you already made up your mind that you want to be in academia for the rest of the life, pursue research. Then how do you see yourself collaborating with people and when you're mentoring? Because as you said that you haven't had the enough of mentoring as a mentor, you are mentoring the people, but when you are working with anybody, mentoring is always in there.
Yeah.
And you are the leader in some of the cases. When you see that there is a rift going on in the lab between your peers,
yeah,
have you faced any?
I haven't. Okay. So I've been fortunate. I haven't. Yeah.
That's very good, because as the lab grows, it is something which is inevitable. What do you think that, how important is that to acknowledge it? Or if you have disagreement with the peers, you want to resolve it, or you want to ignore it?
Yeah, I think it's probably better to resolve it. I think that, especially even if it's something like super small or someone might think is smaller, I think that it could probably build up and over time get bottled up and probably cause some ill will toward, and I don't think that that's good in a collaborative environment. So I think that probably addressing it head on, whether in the presence of a PI or not, probably better to have the PI there. Absolutely. Just to mediate. But I think that it's better to address it head on.
Nice. That's a very good skill set to have it also, because not many people can communicate in the way they want. Okay, so now let's go to your research part.
Cool.
So what you are working on, if we can have a general overview of that.
Sure.
And because some of our audience are from biology background, but there is a vast background. All the researchers from different fields are listening to this. So if you can explain your research.
Yeah. So our lab works on genetic control of the disease vector Aedes aegypti, which is also known as the yellow fever mosquito, and is responsible for shuttling pathogens like dengue virus and yellow fever virus and chikungunya, Zika virus. So basically, our lab is trying to, or my project is looking more specifically at building up the safeguards for genetically modifying these mosquitoes that cause a lot of disease. So just because over time, as genetic tools have advanced, people have been really taking a closer look at this disease vector and finding more efficient ways to control their populations, and genetic methods of control have been of increased interest, I'd say, like over the past couple decades. And my project is trying to understand how DNA damage repair kind of intersects with this genetic modification of them, and try to make it a little bit safer and a little bit more practical.
So in the first place now, when you talked about your research, not many people are very fond of mosquitoes. How do you feel about mosquitoes?
Oh, no, I don't like mosquitoes.
You don't like them? That's the reason why you're working toward this?
It is a big reason why. I mean, they can be, they're pests to a lot of people, but in certain areas of the world, they're a major threat.
Yes.
In terms of causing pretty serious disease. So I don't like them for a number of reasons. One reason is because when I'm in my backyard, I get bit and I start to itch. So, and it's in my case, but for another reason, I mean, thousands and thousands of people can get infected by, hundreds of thousands of people get infected by viruses or pathogens just in general that they can transmit to humans. And I think that that's, terrible. And I think that there should be some kind of way that can be, controlled in a way.
So in your future, you are trying to do you are more towards translational research, or you are more interested in basic research?
Yeah, I think I found myself at a point where I'm interested in both. I think that I really like basic research in the sense that working on the foundation of a certain concept, even at the simplest level, it can be applied to a wide variety of things. Now, I've pretty much seen that I like things that are more translatable. Like, I would say that the work with mosquitoes is probably more practical, more translatable to the real world.
Absolutely.
I would say that that's typically what I lean towards, but more so with model organisms and things that have, quicker life cycle, maybe a little more well-studied, better annotated genome is typically what I gravitate towards. But yeah, it's a mixture between the two. I just think it depends on the research question, though, at the end of the day, and yeah.
Absolutely. So now when we talk about ongoing research and the future research, and a researcher at your stage, when you are still building your niche and you are trying to follow something which people have done, but you have your own question. So how do you think that it is important to have your independent question based on someone else's work?
Yeah, I think that it is definitely important. I think that if you have someone else's work that might be serving, like in my case, as the foundation for my project, I think that it's super important to work with them and to have meetings with them and stay up to date with them on not only their progress, but your progress as well. But also, respect the work that has taken the project to the point where it's able to be in your hands. So I think that that's definitely one way that I try to keep my question in mind is keeping the original question in mind, but also trying to make as much progress on my project as I can and think about how it fits into the bigger picture of that original question. So.
Okay, so now when you see yourself pursuing research in day-to-day basis, and there is a work-life balance, whenever it happens, you said you sacrifice your own time. Like you sacrifice your thing, like, okay, now let's do this work more because you're working towards a deadline. But in general, when you are talking about the 5 years of the duration, how do you see that whenever there are things which are not working, and as you already mentioned that you see that, okay, even those experiments, the failed experiments are trying to tell you something. But when you are overcoming this and building up your foundation, at some point when you see that whatever you were working for n number of years, you were this close to publish a paper and some other group just published it.
Okay.
I'm sure, like, because you haven't faced that situation till now, but have you heard the situation like this when people's work gets scooped?
I've heard of work being, I don't know about necessarily scooped, but very, very close. Maybe just, slightly different, nuanced, but I mean, I've heard, of situations that might be the case.
So if you think that this should not happen, but if this happens, then how do you see that?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really change the research question that you started with. I think that certainly, people might have seen it a little bit more, seen it prior to you submitting it for publication. I don't think it changes, at least right now, I don't think it changes much in terms of like my PhD project. My question is still my question. I still have my hypotheses, and that's what I'm doing all of my work based off of. So I think that my research question wouldn't change. I'd keep working on it, and I would say that if anything, showing that we have the same question kind of validates that the original question I'm working with is pretty important, and it would allow to serve as maybe another group that we can kind of corroborate like our findings based off of. So yeah,
I think this is how one's approach should be. That because when I interact with researchers, some of them have this thing that it was not just me who was interested in this question. There are groups which are working on that. And if you're a PhD student and you see a publication which you are very interested in working on together, so that's how I used to interact with my friends. That see, somewhere a professor is thinking like you, so you are way ahead of your peers because you have your own question. If it is your own, so
I appreciate it.
You can have this way to think about it, and then feel good about it, because that is one thing. Like humor and feel good factor, are the things which I believe is very crucial
Yeah.
in research.
Absolutely.
When you're tensed, when you're facing those failed experiments, and because sometimes, okay, so now let's talk about friends in a way
Yeah.
that some of your friends might be already working
Yeah.
and they have established their lives.
Yes.
And then when you go to home or you meet with your friends,
Yeah.
the family and the friends, how many of them are appreciative of your PhD or your decision?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's easy to think about, you know, people being like at a point where they're already liking the job that they want at my age, or maybe not too much older than me too. I think I do think about that a little bit, but also being around my friends, I think that you know, they understand the importance of it. I think they appreciate, you know, the fact that I am, you know, trying to push myself to get, you know, to a point where I'm hopefully contributing to this wide body of knowledge that's kind of, I would hope, push the world in a, you know, a little bit further forward and maybe in a little bit of a better place. I think that, you know, I would hope they appreciate it. I can't really say for sure what they have going on in their head, but I know that they, you know, they understand that, you know, what I'm doing is what I'm passionate about, and I know that they think it has some kind of importance.
Absolutely.
If they understand it, you know, I think they understand it for sure, but, you know, I'm sure after a certain point of me explaining and talking their ear off, they, you know, like, okay, we get it. Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah.
And I would like to tell all of our viewers here that as Joe is working with mosquitoes, so it is not tough to explain it to anyone, because mosquitoes, nobody likes them.
Yeah, that's
Especially
true.
when they are responsible for killing so many people.
Yeah.
And for the reason they are called as the deadliest organism
Yeah.
on this world.
Mhm.
So they kill the most. So here, when you have this thought of being a researcher, always keep this in mind that every single PhD takes one step ahead. Whatever the present knowledge we have, you are increasing it. You are contributing your part into it, and I think that's what your friends should be proud of you, and your family. And I think every researchers, either they are pursuing their PhD or they are just independent researchers, I think this is the most important part, and one of the reasons of this web series, because here we want to showcase our researchers as celebrities, because there are celebrities in all the fields except researchers, and only so in research the celebrities are called as Nobel laureates. What we are trying to do with this series is every single researcher, doesn't matter at which stage of their life they are, they are contributing, they are putting their efforts into it, which in a longer run is going to help human as a whole.
Yes. Yeah.
And we are working towards it.
Yes. Absolutely.
So we would like to say thanks to Joe for taking time out for us. And if you guys have questions for Joe, you can directly contact Joe. His email ID will be shared with the video whenever it will be. And then if you guys wanted to contact through Empowering Science Foundation, we can do that also. So thank you very much, Joe, for taking time out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Great.